Saddam Hussein was born on April 28, 1937 in Tikrit, Iraq. His father was Hussein Abd al-Majid, who came from a poor peasant family in Tikrit. The family's financial situation was limited, so young Saddam grew up in difficult conditions. His father died when Saddam was only 10 years old, which forced him to take responsibility at an early age. Saddam began to display strong leadership and charisma at a young age. As a child, he was educated in local schools in Tikrit, but throughout his educational life, he often experienced problems due to his undisciplined behavior. The living conditions and hardships of this period were among the factors that shaped his future political career. His family supported Saddam's interest in the Ba'ath Party from a young age. The Ba'ath Party in Iraq was a political movement that sought to gain power by advocating socialism and pan-Arabism. Saddam joined the party at a young age and began to make a name for himself in the political arena. Saddam's early talents and leadership qualities elevated him within the Ba'ath Party. In the process, inspired by his own and his family's hardships, he set himself the goal of rising to the leadership of Iraq. These early life experiences laid the foundations for Saddam Hussein to become a strong leader who would later serve as president of Iraq. Saddam Hussein's political career in Iraq. Joining the Ba'ath Party, 1957 Saddam Hussein joined the Ba'ath Socialist Party at a young age. The party had an ideology of socialism and pan-Arabism. Saddam's joining this party was the first step in starting his political career. Coup and rise within the party. 1963 The Ba'ath Party organized a coup in Iraq in 1963. Saddam played an important role in this coup and then began his rise within the Ba'ath Party. However, he was soon expelled from the party due to internal conflicts within the Ba'ath. In 1968, the Ba'ath Party returned to power in Iraq. During this period, Saddam regained his power in the party. With the return of the Ba'ath Party to power, Saddam was appointed to influential positions in the security and intelligence organizations of the state. Ba'ath Party leadership, 1979 In 1979, after Ahmed Hassan al-Bakir's death, Saddam became Iraq's leader. He was appointed president of the Republic of Iraq and became Secretary General of the Ba'ath Party. During this period, Saddam's authoritarian leadership became more pronounced. Iran-Iraq War, 1980 to 1988 Saddam's political career entered an important period with the Iran-Iraq War, which began in 1980 and lasted until 1988. This war tested Saddam's leadership abilities and brought him to international attention. Invasion of Kuwait, 1990, and the Gulf War, 1991 Saddam's invasion of Kuwait in 1990 caused conflicts with the international community. As a result, in 1991, a US-led coalition launched the Gulf War against Iraq. Saddam Hussein played an important leadership role in the Iran-Iraq War, which began in 1980 and lasted until 1988. His leadership and role during this period was a decisive factor in his political career. The beginning of the war and Saddam's motivation. In 1980, Iraq invaded Iran and started the Iran-Iraq War. Saddam's motivations included the desire to increase his regional influence, the desire to deal with the Iranian revolutionary threat, and the desire to gain control over strategic areas. Saddam's leadership style and war strategy. Saddam was known as an authoritarian leader during the war. As the commander-in-chief of the army, he attracted attention with his ability to determine war strategies and strictly manage his decisions. However, over time, he was subjected to criticism among the public due to the length and cost of the war. Use of chemical weapons. Saddam's leadership was also associated with the use of chemical weapons during the war. In particular, the chemical attack in the village of Halabja in 1988 caused a great international reaction and Saddam's administration was criticized. The end of the war and its effects. When the ceasefire was declared in 1988, Iraq was under a great economic burden with the end of the war and the country suffered great losses. Saddam's leadership was weakened in the international arena with the end of the war, but he maintained his authority in domestic politics. Saddam's domestic politics and social impacts. During the war, Saddam took strict security measures to consolidate his power in domestic politics and applied intense internal repression to suppress opposition. However, discontent among the people increased due to the economic and social effects of the war. The Iran-Iraq War profoundly affected Saddam Hussein's leadership style and Iraq's international relations. However, with the end of the war, economic difficulties and international isolation weakened Saddam's rule and set the stage for his future problems. Invasion of Kuwait, August 1990. Saddam Hussein's most dramatic event of 1990 was the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait on August 2. Saddam regarded Kuwait as a province of Iraq due to economic problems and the decline in oil prices. By invading Kuwait, he tried to increase his regional power and dominate the oil reserves. International reactions and UN resolutions. The invasion of Kuwait was met with a great reaction in the international community. The United Nations, UN, condemned the invasion by calling on Iraq to withdraw. In October 1990, the UN passed a series of resolutions to liberate Kuwait and stop Iraq, which laid the foundation for the Gulf War. America and coalition forces. Based on UN resolutions, an international coalition led by the US decided to intervene in Iraq. This process, which began with Operation Desert Shield, Operation Desert Storm, involved the deployment of military assets by US-led coalition forces. Gulf War, January 17, February 28, 1991. The Gulf War began on January 17, 1991 and soon became a conflict in which Iraq faced a great military superiority. Coalition forces pushed the Iraqi army back with airstrikes and ground operations. The Gulf War ended quickly and a ceasefire was declared on February 28, 1991. Iraq's defeat and consequences. Iraq suffered a major defeat in the Gulf War. Coalition forces liberated Kuwait and heavy economic sanctions were imposed on Iraq. Saddam Hussein also faced difficulties in domestic politics after the war. Discontent among the Iraqi people grew. Saddam's efforts to preserve power. After the war, Saddam increased internal pressures to preserve his power. However, international isolation and economic difficulties were among the factors that undermined Saddam's leadership. The 1990 invasion of Kuwait and the Gulf War was an important period for Saddam Hussein's leadership. Iraq's defeat significantly affected Saddam's authority and the country's international standing. American invasion of Iraq, 2003. In 2003, a coalition led by the United States invaded Iraq in an attempt to overthrow Iraq under the leadership of Saddam Hussein. Saddam met the invasion with resistance, but soon the capital Baghdad fell. Saddam was captured by American soldiers. Judicial process and court decision. Saddam Hussein was put on trial at the Iraqi Supreme Court in 2004. Crimes committed during his dictatorship. Human rights violations and incidents such as the chemical attack in Halabja came to the agenda. In 2006, Saddam Hussein and several former officials were sentenced to death, particularly for the murder of 148 Shia Muslims. Death sentence and death. Saddam's appeal was rejected and the death sentence was carried out on December 30, 2006. Saddam Hussein died by hanging for crimes against the people. His execution caused a wave of controversy and reaction inside and outside Iraq. Saddam's legacy and impact. The execution of Saddam Hussein affected the political and security situation in Iraq. The political and ethnic tensions that persist in Iraq reflect the events during Saddam's leadership and the problems that emerged afterwards. The fate of Saddam's family. Saddam's family also faced a difficult time after Saddam's overthrow and execution. Some family members had to go into exile, while others faced various difficulties in the ongoing complex political environment in Iraq. The overthrow of Saddam Hussein in 2003 and his life afterwards profoundly affected the political landscape of Iraq and the balance in the region. The overthrow of Saddam and the events that followed marked a complex and turbulent period in Iraq.